Whatever's happening with all these tariffs is one thing, and the economic instability, whether we're all in a recession or not, all this chaos seems to be going on. It seems like a very, very interesting time for sure to be in this space on YouTube specifically because I cover so many kind of geopolitical events and memes and maps, and the community is obviously only like 38% of people that watch me are from the US, so a very international audience. There's a lot of things that are happening. There's a lot of things to be worried about. I made a video like recently on this channel where I was talking about how I'm kind of chilling when it comes to the market and the economy. However, this is a concern that I have that I don't think enough Americans are really talking about. Some kind of are, but to be fair, not really enough. And it really just kind of goes to show how, well, basically I can tell you just a statistic. I mean, the U.S., more than half of people in the U.S. don't have their passports. More than half, I think the percentage is actually even crazier than that. This report from usfacts.com say only 36% of Americans have their passport. So again, we tend to be pretty isolationist in a way, and that is, yeah, that's probably the reason why a lot of Americans are not thinking about this topic, but it is coming up. And that is that whether we fix the economy or not, whatever happens with the tariffs, whatever deals happen, the diplomatic situation is going to be severely impacted, I think, for the U.S. No matter what happens in 2 years, if we all get rich in 2 to 3 years, maybe that happens, even if it's just the U.S. and the U.S.'s allies, it's very clear to me that I feel like a lot of other countries are not going to trust us from now on, or at least be way more hesitant. I mean, hey, don't get me wrong. I get everyone just trying to get their bag out here, everyone trying to get rich, and everyone's negotiating all these things, trade, things like that. But the diplomatic hit is going to be severe. This is a weird example to use, but just look at Iran, for example. You know, you had Obama was negotiating with Iran the nuclear deal to avoid Iran getting a nuke. Trump tears it up in his first term, and then after that, they're no longer willing to work with Biden trying to reinstall that nuclear deal. Imagine that, but on a worldwide scale. Now, obviously, Iran is on an extreme end of that spectrum. Iran really despises the U.S., which, if you know anything that happened diplomatically between the U.S. and Iran since the 70s, it's been rough. I can kind of see. The events that have unfolded between our two countries have been pretty bad. So I don't... They have a grudge. I get it. But that, yeah, I mean, that's something that you got to kind of consider, and especially close allies. That's the thing. I mean, not even that. I saw reports about like certain Asian countries now worried about the U.S. pulling back on military support. I mean, obviously that's happening in Europe. It's weird because it seems to me the U.S. wants Europe to build up their military. I mean, it's kind of funny because online you see like a lot of these memes like, yeah, we're going to start building up our military from, you know, people from the EU, Germany, France. I'm pretty sure that's what America wants. They want Europe to have their own army and do that. So when I see like the FUs to the US, we're going to build our own military. It's like, I'm pretty sure that's the point, that the US wants Europe to do their own thing. However, on the opposite end of the world, when you see Asia, that is going to be a little bit more of a difficult thing. I'm not sure if the U.S. necessarily wants that, but there's definitely a lot of discussion going on over there because you have a completely different situation. See, in the Asian theater, I don't think we can say theater because there's not technically a war that's broken out, but U.S. and the U.S.'s allies, they're worried about China versus Europe, and European allies, they're worried about Russia. But overall, they are connected, and the U.S. pulling back military support it's a little bit of a different situation in Asia for sure, because China is such a scary force. Not to say Russia is not scary, but in my personal opinion, Europe can probably solo Russia. You know, I'm just going to say that. I think Europe can solo. Russia can't even solo Ukraine. A united Europe just alone, I think they'll be fine. I mean, just the EU alone. or NATO. NATO without the USA, I think will be fine against Russia, to be honest. But those Asian countries against China, I don't know. Now, there's a lot of players I've talked about in my videos on the main channel this week. I've talked about how there's a lot of people that don't like China. China's got 1.4 billion people, though. And the Asian allies are not as united as Europe is against Russia. You know, like France and Germany and the Italians and the Spanish, they can all come together to unite against Russia. I'm not so sure if South Korea and Japan are going to be able to come together against China. Just because there's still a huge grudge over there. Historically, it's messy. It's messy, because of Japan in World War II. And it gets a lot more messy for other parts of Asia. You have the Vietnamese not necessarily loving the Cambodians, and the Thai not necessarily loving the Vietnamese, or the Indonesians a little bit complicated. The Philippines, Taiwan is there. It's a little bit more fragmented, to say the least. I don't even think a little bit is doing it justice. I don't know if those countries are really going to be able to come together to work together to maybe try to stop China. But the point is that if people pull back on their relationship with the U.S., I think Europe could be okay, but other allies, I'm not so sure. I think everyone would kind of struggle, and that's just kind of a problem. And I know, like I said at the very beginning, I think a lot of Americans are like, "Hey, let's get that bag. Let's renegotiate some deals." But I hope in the back of Americans' minds that we are, you still want to be diplomatically cool with allies, Australia, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Europe, Canada. You want to make sure that you're cool with everybody. I understand that, in my opinion, we're entering this multipolar world. That's what everyone's talking about, where there's going to be multiple powers all around the world. That doesn't mean that you can abandon, sphere of influence. Because right now it doesn't even feel like, if you go back to the Victorian era, before World War I, basically the 19th century, you have spheres of influences. And you still kind of have spheres of influences. But the way the U.S. is acting right now, it doesn't even really feel like the U.S. is considering sphere of influences, because we're really giving a big middle finger to Canada. And we're really giving a big middle finger to other U.S. allies in Europe. I'm sure Australia. I feel like Australia is our number one down homie that's willing to do anything for us. I don't know. I don't hear a whole lot from Australia as of recently. I know that we're tariffing them as well, but we don't want to say screw you to Australia either. There's people all around the world that we don't want to push away from us, and subsequently, there's a lot of neutral powers that we're still fighting for. Like I'm thinking in Africa, and we don't want to push them towards China. They don't even need to be neutral powers. They can be in Europe, and you don't want to push people closer to China. So I don't know. I hope this all works out. Maybe we all can get rich. Again, throw that out of your head. You still don't want to abandon a lot of people. We can't be too isolationist because, man, the amount of pro-China stuff that I see online from Americans themselves, but you see, I see people from Canada and Europe. Everyone's starting, really pissed off at the U.S. for obvious reasons. But, you don't want to see those people get closer to China. If the ultimate goal here is for China is for the U.S. to beat China the same way the U.S. beat the Soviet Union back in the 90s, well, we still did that with allies. I understand that we made people really pissed off along the way. Tell that to Latin America. We pissed off a lot of people in Latin America so that we could win the Cold War. And a lot more than just Latin America, but that's a specific example that I'm thinking about. But we can't tell the entire world screw you, and I'm hoping that's not the case, and that we will ultimately come up with some good deals and help some U.S. allies and get on better terms with Canada and Australia and Europe, and not put getting the bag, getting our money as the number one priority. So we'll see. And I'm hoping that that's the case. I'm hoping that it will be the case that we will still support people like Japan and South Korea. Yeah, and all the ones that I'm talking about. Because if not, then well, maybe we do significantly economically hurt China, but China all of a sudden gets a lot more help from maybe former allies, and they're willing to make more deals economically, and that would definitely hurt. I understand that is the thing. We're trying to stop China from, I don't know, quote unquote, passing us up, becoming the strongest nation on earth or whatever. But keep in mind, pushing away some friends around the world, that could be bad. So anyways, that's just something that's been on my mind recently, and I hope, I don't know, things get a little bit better. Hopefully.